Hey everyone, this is James with Peakway Software, and this video is going to be a little different compared to what we usually upload. I wanted to show you all the different situations and scenarios our AI can handle in regards to the crime system. The base game has not been developed far enough to implement the work we've done in this area yet, so I thought a video demonstration would be appropriate. We're going to show you 8 different settings or situations, and some of the situations can have multiple different scenarios that play out within them. The first situation has 2 aggressive civilians that will witness the crime. Aggressive civilians will try to hold the player accountable for their crimes if there's no authority figures nearby. This only happens if the crime affects the faction the civilian belongs to. The player can choose to enter combat with the civilians or to apologize for their actions and return any stolen items. If the player commits another crime after they've already been warned by the aggressive civilian witnesses, the civilians will no longer warn the player again and will go straight into combat. The second situation is set up similarly to the first, but this time the civilians are passive instead of aggressive. When they witness the player commit a crime, they will approach you in fear and plead for their life. You will also get the option to take any items from their inventory, including their clothes. Once they have finished talking to the player, they will run away and try to hide. As a little side note, if the player tries to talk to a civilian when they are a known criminal with a bounty, it is possible for the civilian to refuse to talk to them. In this example, we added an option to clear debt for testing, but that won't be available in the final game. Once the debt is cleared, they can talk to the civilian like normal again, but not every civilian will refuse to talk to the criminal player, especially if they are important for quests. The third situation features an authority figure and a civilian that witness the crime at the same time. In this situation, there are no other authority figures nearby for backup, so the one that witnesses the crime will confront the player alone. Notice how when there is an authority figure involved, the civilian will always flee the scene regardless of if they are aggressive or not. The player is then given the option to pay a fine appropriate with the intensity of their crime. If they accept the fine, there will be no bounty added and the situation will be resolved. However, if they refuse to pay, a bounty will be added and the authority figure will try to kill the player. The player can flee from the authority figure after committing the crime, and eventually they will give up on chasing the player. The bounty will automatically get reported in this case once the authority figure gets tired of chasing the player. If an authority figure encounters a player with a bounty after it is added, the player will be given another chance to pay the fine. If the player's bounty gets too high, however, they will become an enemy of the faction and will be attacked on sight. The fourth situation is set up similarly to the third, but this time there's another authority figure that is nearby, but they aren't close enough to witness the crime and hear the call for help. If the player refuses to pay the fine in this case, the first authority figure will run to the second to ask for backup, and then they will both confront the player together. The player is given another chance to pay the fine before combat starts in this case. The fifth situation is also set up similarly to the third, but this time the authority figure will not witness the crime firsthand. The civilian witness will call to the guard for help and inform them secondhand since the authority figure is within shouting distance. The sixth situation is set up similarly to the fifth, but this time the authority figure is not within shouting distance, so the civilian will have to run to their location in order to inform the authority figure of the player's crimes. If the player does not interfere, they will get a bounty once the authority figure is informed. At this point, the player will be confronted for their crimes if an authority figure of that faction sees them. If the player kills the witness before they can report the crime, they will not get a bounty since the crime could never be reported. The seventh situation features an aggressive civilian who is sitting in the chair alone. If they detect you when you try to pickpocket them, it will cancel pickpocketing and they will confront you based on their personality type. You can also deafen the civilian in this situation, which would cause you to be undetected while pickpocketing them. Notice how the clothing and weapons the civilian is wearing are not options for pickpocketing. Since the civilian didn't realize a crime was committed, they will respond to the player as if nothing happened. The eighth situation features an authority figure watching over a civilian who is asleep. When the authority figure witnesses the player try to pickpocket the sleeping NPC, they will shout to the civilian to wake them up, which cancels pickpocketing. The authority figure will then confront the player like normal as the civilian flees the area. That's going to be all I have for you today in this video, so go ahead and check out our latest devlog and also pick up Isles of Adalar on Steam Early Access.